Okay.
Coach, you said that yesterday there was no needed added motivation for this game for your players. But what exactly does this game mean to those players, especially the ones from Kansas?
Well, you know, it means every game means everything. All of them. I mean, this is significant because you know, we got a lot of youngsters that are from the state, and they talk about, you know, bragging rights, etc. We've got to go home in the summertime and, you know, be there with the, you know, same youngsters that play for University of Kansas, and you know, it's true for both sides. I mean, they're all highly motivated. I mean, whether if you played at KU, you're highly motivated. If you played here, you're highly motivated. You get you get 12 games a season. You know, maybe 13. I mean, that's 12 times for a competitive young guy to really be competitive. That's 12 out of 365. That's not exactly at the last count. That's what it was, and that's it. I mean, there isn't any more. So, you know, how could you pass up the opportunity to do what you love to do and be as competitive as you love to be, you know, in any game that you play? I think they all, you know, feel that. Is my guess, anyway.
Coach, seeing how you turn this program around, and you know Charlie White's trying to change that culture at KU, can you relate to what he's trying to do right now?
Surely. You know, and I think Charlie's obviously, you know, he's a very, very fine coach, and he's got a very fine staff, and you know, he's got good administration. And Shane is a very positive, serves in a very positive leadership role. I think they're working diligently to do so, and I see progress. I see it taking place on a lot of different venues, in a lot of different areas. So I think you know, I understand what, you know, what the process is, and Charlie does too.
Coach, if you could share with us, have you had any previous encounters with Coach Weiss, and you know, if so, what was that like, and what kind of coach is he? What does he bring to the table at KU?
Well, I met Charlie at the conference meetings and visited briefly with him there. As a coach, he's, you know, I think his history precedes. I mean, he's awfully good. It's hard to, you know, it's hard to prepare your defense against him. Not altogether certain what you're going to get. You know, I think they do a nice job. You know, a lot of people can, you know, change up, you know, schematically, you know, a great deal, and be able to execute effectively. And I think that's, you know, that's something that they do that I admire, that they're able to go from, you know, a variety of different offensive schemes, and still the execution is good, which tells me that you know, the position coaches are also coaching quite well.
Coach, I know it's usually the same song and dance, but obviously your team.
Not a dance. I'm way beyond that. Songs are very, very brief too.
You offered to dance with me in 2003, if I recall.
No, I didn't.
Come off that, you know, win over the highest ranked team in program history, and then now you're going to face KU in a venue where you haven't been. You played against them since 2009. What is the energy level that you picked up amongst your team during the bye week and heading into this week?
Well, I think the bye week went reasonably well. You know, I thought they, for the most part, they practiced at a fair degree of intensity. I wasn't too pleased with practice last night. They had a little bit of some break time in there. But, you know, I think they, and it wasn't, you know, a lack of trying to be into it. It was just a variety of different circumstances that caused that. But I think that, again, it's hard for me to imagine, as I was saying a while ago, that any young person anywhere in the country that enjoys the competitive nature of collegiate football would not understand the value of being highly motivated and wanting to carry that motivation onto the practice field to improve themselves. And that's what we try to instill.
There's a lot of numbers that go along with every game and every series. One thing particularly in the past 16 games, times that you've met KU, your defense has allowed one touchdown on average in every 53 offensive snaps by KU.
Where do you get this stuff?
What makes, from 93 on, what has made your defenses so tough against a variety of different Jayhawk offenses?
Well, I can't tell you that I have an answer to that. I would like to think that it wasn't, if we played well defensively, it wasn't just against the University of Kansas that we were playing reasonably well against, most opponents that we lined up against. I can't relate to the statistics, and I can't isolate the University of Kansas from the rest of our schedule. We try to play as well as we can against all of them.
Coach, KU has done a really good job at this point of forcing turnovers. Can you, based on what you've seen from them, do you have a decent explanation for that, or is it just one of those things?
Well, I don't think anything is just one of those things. I think they play hard, they play aggressively. The coaches put them in good positions to, in the secondary, they do a nice job of breaking on the ball. And obviously they are disciplined to play well with their eyes to make sure they don't get caught out of position. And as I said, they play hard and aggressively, and so you make aggressive tackles, and you can turn the ball over, and they work diligently to try to strip the ball. You see an awful lot of that during the course of their games, that there's always an attempt, if they get somebody to the tackle, then they've got somebody, the follow-up guys are trying to strip the ball. So they just coach it well.
Coach, what do you think of Charlie Weiss has been really talking up the rivalry, especially since now with Missouri gone, this is their main rivalry game. What do you think of kind of him putting that renewed emphasis on this game, where maybe it hadn't been there before as much for that team?
Well, I don't remember that it ever wasn't a viable game for University of Kansas. But I'm not close to it as Charlie is. I'm sure he's done his apparently done some research, in that regard. But I always thought they were, that it meant a great deal to them. But I don't know the nature of that. I'm pretty isolated here. I don't know about the outside world, and I just don't know how much emphasis. I don't know about the KU-MU competition and how that relates to Kansas State. Really don't.
Coach, with the KU's 3 running backs, are they very similar, very different styles of running backs, or what do you see from that?
More similar than not. I think there are, some differences. But as soon as I say, well, one guy's a little bit more of an inside runner, and the other guy, one of the others is a little more of the outside runner. Sure enough, it turn around and do it the other way around. But I think by and large, and I think that's probably why all 3 of them are on the field. They're all good running backs. I think they have some explosiveness to them. All of them seem to have good lower body ability, meaning that they can stay on their feet and carry tackles and still have some elusiveness to them. There's a little bit of a speed difference, but by and large, I don't see a big difference. They can all get involved in the passing game. All of them have.
Coach, you talked before about the significance of what this program to win this game against KU, but does it has there been anything extra in the program that maybe went as often as you have, by some of the margins that you have recently?
I would downplay the fact that we fared well against them because all those games were important and significant. If you were to lose, half those ball games, then there's a great deal of concern, and it becomes, significant for a different reason. Why that takes place and how to do something about it. That's true, no matter who you play. I think, this year is this year, and last year was eons ago. Whatever happened in the past doesn't make any difference. It's all about right now.
Coach, can you speak to the other challenges that KU's offense brings outside of the running game, passing game with Dane Chris back there? I know he struggled, but what do you see about him on tape?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, everybody's a concern. They got good running backs, so that's a concern. Completion percentage a little bit lower, but he's throwing the ball downfield more. And I like the way the receivers run. I mean, they run good, hard, crisp routes and get separation from secondary players. And he's able, I see him stand on one hash mark and throw the ball 15 yards deep to the far hash or the far boundary. That's an NFL throw. Those are, hard to come by. It's not an easy task. But he's able to do it, and so I think the receivers and quarterbacks work well together. So that's that's an issue. And as I said before, I think it's you don't know what you're going to get. We might spend 2 weeks practicing against something we'll never see, and no time in that 2-week period. On Saturday, see something that hadn't been on that we haven't had a chance to practice. So. That's that in itself, and of course you face that every week. But Charlie, I say Charlie. I mean, during the course of the season, you see different things appear from game to game.
Coach, you've got two linebackers right now, Jarrell Childs and Justin Taylor, who didn't start their careers at linebacker, and they're both playing pretty well. So what do you think about their progression, and what allowed them to be able to get to where they are?
Well, I think they're both reasonably good athletes. They both have some instinct for the game itself, regardless of which side of the ball that they happen to play on. And I think both of them are. When I say they're athletic, they run well. They change directions well, and they're intelligent young guys, and they pick up the system rather quickly, which both of them have done. And I don't think that it's for somebody that has those characteristics that it's a dramatic change. It might seem like going from quarterback or running back to linebacker position, but still I think you're if you have football smarts, so to speak, you understand both sides of the ball and the global picture as opposed to just the minute position. And I think that's what's helping them so much is as they advance forward, they're beginning to learn more and more and more about the entirety of the system defensively, and that continues to help them get better.
Coach, John Hubert's played a lot of snaps against Oklahoma. I was curious if there's competition behind him right now as there was at the beginning of camp, or is he just playing at such a high level right now that it's kind of hard to take him off the field?
Well, the competition, it's still a competitive position, and by that I mean he's cleanly the #1 running back, but I think we've got 2 or 3 guys behind him that we're not afraid to have on the field, that really have done well. Whether that opportunity comes or not remains to be seen.
And also, is Boston Stuyvesant practicing this week?
Boston is on the practice field, yes, and he's practicing.
Another question for you. When you returned here, K-State had come off 3 straight losses against KU, and in that 17-10 win here in 2009, Grant
This
Gregory.
guy get all this stuff.
Research for the research.
You got a little cubicle for him, is that he just?
I don't let them out.
Talk to your wife.
Grant Gregory was the starting quarterback in that game. Lamarck Brown had 3 catches. Lulu Pomelli had 8 tackles to lead your team. And your current starting quarterback was a redshirt freshman wide receiver who played on special teams and didn't even make a statistic in that game. Since that time, of course, you know, you've gone KU 2 straight times. Kind of offer some kind of mile marker as to the significance and how things have changed since that first time that you played KU out here in 2009.
Well, I don't know that I can answer the question. You know, I think some of the names are I'm oblivious to, but you know, I think we've just gotten, you know, from our standpoint, it doesn't have anything to do with University of Kansas or anybody else. I just think we have, you know, made some progress, and you know, like we say all the time, we've just gotten a little bit better, a little better, a little better. And that's the nature of what we try to do. And if there's an answer for anything, that's probably it.
Fair or unfair, could you imagine walking into Veneer and not seeing that Governor's Cup trophy in the lobby?
Well, I hadn't thought about it. If it happens, then ask me on Monday, and I'll see how it felt on Sunday.
Fair enough.
Coach, much of a couple of previous questions. Can you just speak to the maturation of John Hubert in the backfield and how his game has developed from last year and through these first 4 games up to this point?
Well, part of what I was just responding to, I think he's just gradually gotten himself a little bit better. John has good instincts, and I think when you put that together with repetition and opportunity, it enhances your performance, which it has for him. I mean, it's just a matter of, you know, the more times you do it, the better you become at it. And that has just enhanced his instinctiveness, you know, being able to get as many opportunities as he does.
Coach, talk a little bit about each of the guys on the offensive line for you. Obviously, when you have a quarterback who's completing 70% of his passes, the guys up front are doing a lot right.
Well, I think we're getting better, you know, consistently. They take a tremendous amount of pride in their capacity to be able to help Colin and help their team, help the passing game. They work diligently at it. I mean, it's a big part of their practice day. And they work, you know, they work together so well, you know, and pass protection is, you know, so much of it is communication, you know, prior to and after the snap of the football, and be able to adjust, you know, to a variety of different things that can take place. And your backs have an awful lot to do with that as well, because they get involved in the protection, and you know, they work at it extremely hard too.
Going off of what you said about communication, how essential has B.J. Finney been, just being a returning starter and being a leader, even just as a sophomore on this team?
Well, tremendously beneficial. You know, having the year of experience has truly helped him to gain an even vastly improved understanding of what defenses do and what they can do. He's learned a little bit more about how to view videotape, film, and study opponents, and that's enhanced his ability to make decisions and help his teammates out. He's made progress.
Coach, if you could go back in time to 1989 for me, the last time KU won in Manhattan with you as head coach, what memories do you have of that ball game? And aside from obviously wanting to win from there on out, what kind of things did you learn about this rivalry that you've kind of instilled with your program since then?
Well, to answer the latter part of the question, the first part, I have no clue. I don't remember yesterday. But I think our youngsters, kind of like I was saying a moment ago, our youngsters have, they feel strongly about the game. But, then we're going to play in another week. And whoever we play then, our guys can feel awful strongly about that game as well. I mean, it doesn't mean, again, that, this isn't, for some, and I guess that would be true in all camps, for some of them, it's, it is really they had to pick out one game, this might be it, and that might be somebody that, like I say, lives in town, has some circumstances that make it even more significant. Have family members or, a split family in terms of one from KU and one from Kansas State. I mean, there's a variety of different circumstances, and it's kind of like any other week. I mean, every youngster is different, and different things have a greater impact on one than they might on another. But I've, since that period of time, I don't think there's ever a game that we have gone into that we haven't felt it was the most important game that we played, and that the opponent was a very significant opponent, and that we would have to play and prepare extremely well in order to be successful. And when you think about it along those lines, and you look around the country, and you see games that are taking place, the quote-unquote upsets, that take place, and at the end of the day, there is a tremendous amount of parity, and sometimes the best athletes don't play the best, and it's a matter of how well you prepare and how well you play, and whoever prepares the best and plays the best, is probably going to win ball games, and I don't think that's changed since the inception of the game of football, or athletics for that matter.
Bill, your team has committed so few penalties this year. I'm wondering how important do you think that's been to the early success? How vital is that to you?
Well, I think extremely vital. I think that's, there's a variety of different things that you would like to be able to hang your hat on, and it goes back to that old thing about not beating yourself. And that's a very well, it's a true element of the game, for anybody, that you just can't afford, penalties and turnovers and missed assignments, all those things, really become significant in the long run in terms of how successful you happen to be. There might be a game or two where you turn the ball over and you end up winning the ball game for some other reason, but by and large, if you don't get penalized and you don't turn the ball over, then your chances to be successful, are elevated a great deal. And there's other areas that fit into that, those particular things, but that's certainly one of them.
And is that something you've seen improve since you came back? The amount of penalties, the disciplines that got better each year?
Well, I think, year in and year out, we probably have, but we led the conference and the least number of penalties, and I think turnovers last year were right at the top, and I think we're right there again this year. So we are making improvement, but that's up to this point in time. You still have to do it, and that's Saturday's home ball game.
Coach, numbers would suggest that Adam Davis has really kind of taken another step from where he was a year ago. Do you see it that way, and can you comment about the type of football he's playing for you right now?
Well, I think I do believe that he's become a better player. And again, the experience and repetition. And just being able to do and see the same things over and over and over again has helped him. I think he's probably pretty close to being the same physical player. I think he's enhanced his mental approach and understanding of the game significantly over that time.
I love the microphone, by the way. Turnovers.
TV show?
You're at +5 in turnovers right now, and that's the best start after 4 games since you've returned here. How pleased have you been with the capacity for your team to create turnovers so far?
Well, I think we've enhanced our capacity capacity or good fortune, one of the two, to create or get turnovers, and I think we've done an improved job of being able to disrupt the quarterback play, and we've got more sacks, I think, at this time than we did last year. So we've made improvement in those areas, which are really, again, significant areas of determining success or failure on defense.
Coach, in regards to the bye week, can you give us an assessment of the team's performance, things you were pleased with, maybe something you weren't pleased with the team?
Well, if there was something that I wasn't pleased with, it would just be the consistency day in and day out. But there wasn't anything that I was, other than maybe last night's practice fell off a little bit. But I think, prior to that, I thought the spirit was good. And, the emotion of our practices was positive, and I thought the focus and the discipline was good. So, I haven't been, I wouldn't be critical of the first week. Now we're getting into the second week. That remains to be seen.
Coach, we've seen this year quite a few more of just the longer passing completions. I know you talked about how Collins improved across the board and all the different aspects. Is there anything specific that you can share with us about how maybe he's tweaked his throwing motion or his footwork or other technique that seems to have helped? Or if that's more on the end of the receivers, something about that?
Well, again, it's a combination of things. I think, the more you do something, I think the better feel you get for it. And throwing the ball any further than from me to you really takes a feel, because the same route, there might be 1 or 2 yards different, and you can't afford, to have a 1 or 2 yard difference in the throw with defenses being as good and reactive as they are. So I think it's a combination of things. I mean, his diligence, to work on all aspects of his game and his passing game, mechanically, but as much as anything, working with wide receivers and getting a true feel for each other, and having that good understanding of who's going to be where and when and how they're going to get there, and when the ball's going to get there, and him having the capacity to not have to hold on to the ball too long with the uncertainty of where a receiver might be. We've still had a few issues with that, but by and large, that part is coming together a lot better, and I think that's what helps.
And what kind of improvement have you seen from this group of receivers?
Well, I think the same thing. I think it's just once again getting accustomed to each other, and the constant repetition of doing the same things over and over again, and doing it against different people, not just practice people, but on the game field as well. Just learning to be a little bit more precise about how they run the routes and the timing and the understanding of how to adjust their routes depending on what you do defensively. I mean, all those things. Just the more you do it, if you're conscientious about it, then the more improvement that you'll make. And I think they've been conscientious about it.
Last one, please. Coach, I know you don't get too far ahead of yourself in watching film of future opponents. You kind of stay focused on the task at hand. But what was your reaction to see a Big 12 score 70-63?
Well, I canceled our trip. That's both places. Well, it's, I mean, it's amazing, and not just the score, but how it happened, how it got there. It's, and a tribute to both offensive football teams. Sure, they threw the ball around tremendously well. But you see, you know, and I think everybody sees, you know, the scores and you know, across the country, or you know, I don't know. There's a study for him, right? So, you know, I would assume that there are more points scored, you know, at this point in time across the country than, you know, in previous years. Would be my guess, you know, just, you know, even conferences where.
Does this kind of sum up this conference, though, that you've passed the road test at Oklahoma, but those two teams are still waiting for you? How daunting this conference can be that you have to still go to those two schools and put up those.
Well, it is daunting, those two plus a whole bunch of others that, you know, that you're concerned about. And everybody presents their different problems for you. They're not all the same, but by the same token, I mean, there's, you look around, there ain't bad teams. You can't find one if you try. They're all problems.
I guess, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.